Do you guys remember the coolest promotional trailer we've ever had for Honkai Star Rail? The Annihilation gang. Dude, this storyline was going to be so fire, but it seemed to have never come to fruition. But upon further inspection at the clues given to us in the promo trailer and everything that's been happening in the game since then, I've come to realize I think we've been getting this storyline the entire time, and things might be starting to heat up. Let's talk about this. So this will be a bit of lore mixed in with a bit of theory, but in all honesty, a lot of what you're going to hear will be, of course, speculation, so keep that in mind. However, if you've seen any of my past videos on any of the theories I've put into the game so far, every single one of those theories has come true so far. But again, forewarning, there will be a lot more speculation in this one than previous videos because there's little to go on compared to those, but I think if you read between the lines, there's definitely some juicy stuff going on here. And definitely stick around to the end. There's something I want to show you guys you may have not noticed at the end of the video, and also you kind of need to engage with a whole lore or theory video if you actually want to understand everything that's going on here. So let's go ahead and get going. But let's analyze the important bits of this trailer here. Duke Inferno gave missions to every single one of these characters, which he called his children, and there are clues within everything that he said to these characters that foretell what's going to happen in the future for the Annihilation gang, as well as this all happened a very long time ago, long before patch 2.0, and I don't know if you guys even noticed that. I'm going to try to say this in the same voice that Duke said it in, because occasionally I will add context in my own voice, so please excuse me for sounding a little cringe here. Don't worry, it's only for a short bit, and we go right back to me sounding exactly like this afterwards.
Children of the Flame, this marks your rite of passage. Akash, I lit a fire in your eyes and showed you music of the strings. Serenade the celebration and hush the harmony into muted awe. Dubra, I set your form alight and taught you mastery of the blade. Temper it with sulfur, maim the elation, and let the performer's blood and tears pour into the abyss. Katarina, I kindled a flame into your heart and granted you blood of fire. Use your wrath to shatter the preservation sanctum and melt their gold to create a statue of our savior.
I want to point out that Katarina's mission is pretty telling in my opinion. And if you couldn't tell already, Duke Inferno is aligned with the destruction. So when he speaks of making a statue of our savior, he's referring to Nanook, the Aeon of Destruction.
And Constance, at last, my most ambitious and exceptional child.
Did anyone say Powercreep?
Anyways, there is nothing more to teach you. Just remember, without Penacony's midnight hour, strip away all they hold dear, and leave naught but the remembrance's tomb.
This is also very interesting, because if this was a dev studio like From Software, the makers of Elden Ring, there would be some pretty big clues in what we just heard. And I think Hoyoverse, at times, does have some pretty amazing lore. I've made several theories about Honkai Star Rail based on deep lore, and if you dig deep enough, you might find some crazy stuff. Like when I was the only person on YouTube to realize that Misha was the watchmaker of Penacony, all the way back in 2.0 at the beginning of that story. That mystery wasn't actually solved in the game until 2.2. So let's analyze what Duke said here to Constance. It's clear he wants Constance to influence the Penacony arc in some way, and she did if you remember in the main story, that cutscene with Black Swan. But I wanted to point out the line where Duke says, "Leave not, but the remembrance's tomb." Acheron was in the Penacony story, and we're told that Acheron kills Duke Inferno, and she would do this, of course, with her sword. The name of that sword is called Not, and it is spelled the exact same way that Duke used in his statement. Likely, let's be honest, that probably means nothing and is just actual coincidence, but check this out. Penacony's Aeon of representation is the Harmony, not the Remembrance. We even get the Harmony Trailblazer there, but Amphorius's Aeon of representation seems to be the Remembrance, at least one of them, right? We also get the Remembrance Trailblazer there. And other characters are also releasing from that path on Amphorius as well. Black Swan stated, though, that 3 paths have influence in Amphorius, not just one. Oh yeah, isn't Black Swan the one that told us we should go to Amphorius? She's the one who pushed us to go. She's the one who convinced the Express to specifically go to Amphorius. Black Swan is also the character that had the conversation with Constance on Penacony. If it wasn't for Black Swan, we wouldn't have gone to Amphorius and gotten the Remembrance Path at all. In one sentence by Duke Inferno, there are several connections to storylines within the game. Had this been one simple coincidence, I wouldn't think anything of this, but there are too many coincidences here to think that all is just a coincidence, right? At least some of this seems to be deliberate, and based on what we have seen so far from Constance in that cutscene with Black Swan, she seems like a character that can work well from the shadows, influencing things much like Elio does, never having to necessarily be there in person to steer the narrative of the story. Duke even states that Constance is his most ambitious and exceptional child. That Powercreep joke isn't exactly a joke. If she does become a playable character and releases, I think she's instantly going to be a top tier, like Powercreep actually kind of stuff we're talking about here. Now, some of y'all might not necessarily remember what happened with that cutscene with Black Swan and Constance, so I'll briefly go over it now. What essentially happens is Black Swan is trying to find out more about Acheron because they don't fully trust her yet at this moment in the story. And so she's using a music box that was the invitation to the Annihilation gang, which we find out from Black Swan was actually given to them around the time of the Night of Everflame Mansion scene that we saw in that trailer. There's even quotes in that cutscene from the trailer that we're looking at right now, right? And so I wanted to point this out because it's important, because Constance is the person that gets Boot Hill in touch with Black Swan. This is only done in response to Black Swan wanting to find out more about Acheron. Constance is alive. We know that for a fact from this scene. There's no way she could have done this as a lingering memory. She does this and overrides the memory entirely through some sort of form of potentially a memo keeper ability that she has. In fact, Constance realizes immediately, without ever even having to talk to Black Swan, that Black Swan is a memo keeper, and she asks her if she's from the Garden of Recollection or the Cremators. The Cremators we've never even heard of until this moment in time, which makes us think that maybe Constance is also a memo keeper, but from the Cremators rather than the Garden of Recollection. This also makes us wonder if Black Swan has some ulterior motives to try to find out more about what's going on here. Because if you're Black Swan in this moment, you got a lot of questions. And maybe you guys could help me out with this part right here, because I was looking through my old footage and clips, and I didn't find a spot where Black Swan was telling the main characters about Constance still being around. She told him about Boot Hill and all that stuff, but that might be kind of important, because regardless of whether Constance and Black Swan interacted with each other, Constance is the one who pushed the narrative forward in that moment. Black Swan was searching for clues, and that old memory that she was looking through was tampered with by none other than Constance. She didn't want Black Swan to see the rest of that memory that she was looking through, and she's the one who introduced Boot Hill to Black Swan and pushed the narrative forward. She's the one who planted some of the seeds that pushed the story forward the way that it did. She had influence on the story arc of Penacony, whether people realize that or not. What I'm essentially saying here is that Constance wanted things to go down the way that they did on Penacony, right? And she has motives of her own that do not necessarily align with the main characters, right? And Black Swan has motives of her own too. She's already proven to us that she can be a little bit of a snake in the grass on Penacony, and despite the fact that we realized her truth and we trusted her after all of that went down, and we don't necessarily have a reason to distrust her now, she could mean well by trying to send us over to Amphorius, but she might also have some ulterior motives that might be tied into this whole situation with Constance. If you're Black Swan, I'm sure you're curious about what's going on with the Cremators. I'm sure you're curious about what's going on with Constance, right? And who better than to try to help figure out this mystery while helping the Amphorius world with their situation than the main character? And Constance proved in that cutscene that she's very, very powerful, right? She tampered with that memory in a way that Black Swan couldn't read the rest of the memory. She didn't want her to know what else was going on and just pushed her straight to Boot Hill, which pushed her straight to Acheron and got her what she wanted. And how did she know what Black Swan was looking for without even being in the room? Remember this, Constance did all of this without even being there, bro. Constance has proven that her abilities might supersede Black Swan's as a memo keeper. She might be more powerful with memo keeper abilities than Black Swan is. So if you're sitting there thinking to yourself that Constance couldn't have in some way influenced Black Swan to push us to go to Amphorius, I don't know what to say about your thought process there. That is definitely a possibility, and I don't see why we wouldn't believe into that, at least to some degree. So we can only assume at this time that things are working out perfectly for Constance and the mission that was given to her by Duke Inferno, especially when he says that he wants her to take out the Remembrance. And where are we more than likely gonna have that storyline go down? Amphorius. Shit's about to go down, bro. Now, let's take a look at some other important things we learned from this trailer. It's called A Night of Everflame Scene 33. Scene 33. That's clearly a callback to Elio and his script. I thought that was pretty cute and rather interesting, because we have another Myriad Celestia trailer that also tells us the scene in the Honkai Star Rail story that it comes from. It was the Kafka trailer all the way back in patch 1.2, the Japella Rebellion, Scene 47. Interesting. So A Night of Everflame, Scene 33, took place a long, long time ago. Do the math. Scene 47 takes place well after Scene 33. So the Kafka trailer was foreshadowing and took place likely after the events of patch 1.2, and the Annihilation Gang trailer took place in the past before patch 2.0 when that trailer actually dropped. So, the Annihilation Gang has been working in the shadows for a long time now and likely has already set some narratives in motion we still have yet to discover. How deep does this rabbit hole go, I wonder? One thing is for certain. This wasn't just some trailer to make Duke Inferno look cool so that Acheron can kill him later. Yeah, that does happen, but this is also an important canon event in the Honkai Star Rail story and a part of Elio's script directly named, right? Likely one of many, many reasons the Stellaron Hunters were on Penacony, probably, right? By the way, we haven't actually seen the Stellaron Hunters do anything with a Stellaron since Kafka implanted one in us, you know? Implanted one in us. Okay, Gooners, calm down. Clearly, the Stellaron Hunters are meant to influence things in the background as well. I mean, we know that the main character used to be a part of their group somehow, some way. We kind of get, hints of that in Amphorius' 3.0 story. We also get hints of that in previous patches as well. And wouldn't you know it, the Stellaron Hunters influence the main character, and the main character goes around taking care of Stellarons all across the universe. So the name still fits. Anyway, side tangent over, because obviously the Stellaron Hunters weren't just there to potentially influence the situation with the Annihilation Gang and make sure that all actually went down the way it was supposed to, but it was also because Firefly had some really important stuff to do on Penacony too. And now, real quick, let's go over the paths that were mentioned here. Akash for the harmony. Makes sense he plays the cello, which is a musical instrument. Correct me in the comments if I said the wrong instrument there. But anyways, Dubra for the elation, which, by the way, she looks like a summoner character, so this fits with the new meta we're getting in Amphorius. Perhaps they're a new follow-up character, because in the simulated universe, that's what follow-up synergy came from, right? It was through the elation, which they've already broken their rules, unfortunately, with this type of thing. Now, think about this. We just got the Remembrance in Amphorius, and the Remembrance in Simulated Universe was all about freezing the enemies. It had nothing to do with summoning characters at all, so they already broke their own rules, which is interesting, because maybe the elation is a new path, perhaps. And they might break their own rules again from Simulated Universe and give us something completely different than follow-up synergy. because follow-up synergy is usually tied to the hunt right now, right? Anyways, just a rant, just a thought. We're moving forward. Katarina for the preservation, which is obvious because, I mean, look at her. She's a unit, and I doubt she can move around much with that, you know, big-ass, like, ball and chain she's got going on there. I mean, it's pretty hot, but it's probably pretty heavy, probably hard to move around with that thing. Anyways, it just screams preservation character, right? And Constance for the remembrance, which, would you look at that? We discussed earlier how perhaps she may have influenced Black Swan to, in some way, shape, or form, to take us to Amphorius, where the remembrance path was introduced. Now, that's obviously a bit of a stretch, but please, Hoyoverse, dude, release Constance and Amphorius. This would be so sick, dude. Anyways, the reason why I brought up those different paths is because I want to go over something important. Akasha's mission doesn't necessarily have to have occurred on Penacony. Sunday, for example, warns us at the end of patch 2.7 to be careful of the Harmony because it has many faces, and obviously the power of Aeons stretch farther than one singular planet. Look how much influence the Abundance and the Hunt had on the Xianzhou Luofu while we were there. We all thought we were going to get like one of those paths while we were there, right? And we didn't get either one. So obviously the Abundance and the Hunt are going to be important on some other world down the line. I think you get what I'm trying to say there. But having a major Harmony influence so shortly after Penacony feels, I don't know, a little lackluster or lazy, kinda, right? I think unless Akasha failed in some way on Penacony and that was supposed to be his mission, I think we'll likely have his moment sometime later on in the story on some other world. But the Elation, the Preservation, and the Remembrance, that's 3 different paths, right? Is it possible these are the 3 paths Black Swan spoke about in the patch 3.0 opening cutscene that we were told hold heavy significance on Amphorius? Or will they hold off on some of this and only the Remembrance take precedent on Amphorius? I don't know. It's very interesting, but not worth speculating on, I guess, too much, but it was definitely worth mentioning. So earlier I told you to stick around to the end to look at something with me, so let's go ahead and do that. The Amphorius promotional footage showed us many characters that will be releasing, and we even got names for those characters, but if you paid attention in some of the promo, you'd notice they showed us some other characters we did not get names for. Let's take a look at them. Any of these characters seem familiar to you? Genuine question. It's very hard to tell at this time how to interpret these characters. I'm not saying here that any of them are from the Annihilation gang. It's obvious that some of them aren't, like whoever this is, for instance, was shown a bit more than the rest, and definitely is not an Annihilation gang member, right? Alright, so I gotta interrupt myself real quick here because I noticed something while editing that I did not notice before. As you can see here, we have Aglaya, Hyacine, Tribby, Anaxa, Cypher, Finan, Castris, and Maide. That is 8 characters for the first 4 patches of Amphorius, the first half, right? That's 2 characters per patch. That's been the formula going for the entire game's lifespan, right? But you may have remembered a moment ago, I showed you 4 silhouetted characters that have been shown to us, but they have not been truly identified or properly revealed by Hoyoverse yet. That leaves 4 more character slots to be released in the second half of Amphorius, unless Hoyoverse decides to randomly change up their formula and only release 1 character for 4 straight patches. We have 4 character slots also coming to us besides the 4 silhouetted characters, and I think you get what I'm going for here. There are 4 other characters in the Annihilation gang besides Duke Inferno, who, according to what Acheron says, died at her hands, right? But that leaves Akash, Katarina, that leaves Constance, and Dubra. 4 characters that have yet to actually come into the game from the Annihilation gang, right? So I was kind of thinking it might just be Constance more than likely, but maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they have some influence on the second half of Amphorius that we did not know about coming into this. Now again, I still kind of feel like Constance is the most likely character and probably just her to show up, and they might sprinkle in Akash and Katarina and Dubra in maybe some other world or something like that. But I did want to point this out because this could be insane. There's 4 other characters that weren't shown to us potentially, unless they change up the formula and do something completely different, which is definitely possible. But I think you guys are probably getting as excited as I am that something is brewing for the second half of Amphorius. We just don't know 100% what that is yet. Either way, we're getting 8 story patches in Amphorius. Not 3, not 4, but 8, right? And not a lot of people know about that because that was only told to us in the patch 3.0 special programming, which not everybody saw. They're cooking something interesting in the second half of Amphorius, and I don't know what it is, but based on what Duke said to Constance, there's a real good chance we'll see some meddling from the Annihilation gang here. I just hope Hoyoverse doesn't pull another fast one on us and give us a cutscene like with Black Swan on Penacony where you don't even actually see Constance, or like how they baited us with Jing Liu in the 2.5 promo just to make us wait even more. Anyways, this isn't a theory that I can truly stand behind in all honesty because we lack so much information, right? This is very different than the other theories that I posted before where I felt very confident in them and I could basically prove beyond a reasonable doubt that those things were gonna come true, and every single one of those videos I posted has come true up to this point, but this one's different. So I don't want you to get this twisted, okay? I want you guys to keep that in mind. Hoyo has dropped the ball before, and it's possible we have to wait literally years before they give us the rest of the Annihilation gang storylines, which, by the way, I think are split up into parts based on how Duke described everything. I don't think it will be one big splash, but several worlds that are influenced by their meddling. Even if it happens, right, this could all just be kind of a big nothing burger and not as interesting as they've all set up, but look at the designs they made for these characters. Look at the promo that they gave us. It feels very stupid of them to give us this, waste all of the money it took to animate this stuff and write all this stuff into the story just for nothing to happen at all, right? So let me know what you think about all this in the comments. Let me know who out of the Annihilation gang you are most excited for. Most people seem to be fans of Constance. I liked Duke Inferno, and of course Katarina, because come on, use your eyeballs, dude. She's obviously an Omega Hottie preservation character based on her design and what Duke told us. Anyways, like and subscribe for more content like this if you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.